site called Pumapunku on the Altiplano of Bolivia, next to the famous, or more famous, Tiwanaku. And what's incredible here is this is recent excavation, as in maybe the last year or two, but we're going to see obvious examples of where recycling has been done. This area was buried in at least 2 feet of soil. You see, what you're looking at is red sandstone that's been made into a wall. But look at this stone here. This is the gray andesite, and look at how beautiful that surface is. The andesite is harder than the red sandstone. And there are indications that the work in andesite is actually much older. The reason why it's so pristine is because it's been buried underground for possibly thousands of years. Thousands of years older than the official story of this site being 2,000 years old. So this is supposed to be just a drainage channel. You see the big rocks that are on top of it. It's all sandstone, red sandstone. But this is where we have evidence that clasps existed, so-called keystone cuts. You notice there's no mortar between the stones. And these clasps would have been molten bronze poured here. We're at 13,000 feet in altitude. And to actually liquefy bronze at this altitude would be incredibly difficult. So this area was exposed in 2012. Most of it is red sandstone, but again here we have a beautiful piece of the andesite. Here, there, and there. There's no way you can do this with hand tools. Unfortunately, there's so much damage to the edges, but we will find areas where the intersection of the two surfaces is so incredibly precise and so crisp edging. This had to have been done with machine tools. It could not have been done by primitive people with bronze chisels and stone hammers. The reason why it's called the Enigma of Pumapunku is because if archaeologists were honest, they would say they have no clue who made it. Clearly, some aspects of it, not all, but some aspects, were the work of a very technologically advanced culture, minimum 2,000 years ago, but more likely, even more so. Here again is an example of a piece of stone precisely engineered and cut that is under, or clearly was underground. And here you're clearly looking at a recycled piece of stone. You see the fine workmanship and the angles, yet heavily eroded. However, if you look at the rest of this wall, you see how inferior the workmanship is. So clearly this was recycled from an older structure and made into a part of a wall, but technologically very, very sophisticated. These surfaces are so incredibly smooth, especially here. How could this possibly have been done with hand tools? The tolerance of flatness, the precision of the flatness of that surface is within 2, maybe 3 10,000ths of an inch. And here too, this is flatter than your tabletop. This is as flat as a sheet of glass. How could it possibly have been done by a Bronze Age culture 2,000 years ago? Most of this material, the pristine material, was buried. And so that's why it's still so beautiful. Other areas had been exposed to the air for thousands of years, like over here. So that's why the surface is not as fine. But okay, what we're doing is we're walking through an actual excavation. You can see that where I'm at is 2 feet plus below the ground surface. And what do we see at our footsteps? All of the stone here is exactly how it was found when the excavation was done. This is an amazing piece of work. You see the sharpness of the corners, the flatness of the surfaces. The other amazing thing about Pumapunku is you don't really find too many 90-degree angles. These people were more sophisticated than that. And when we go over to the H blocks, you'll see definite evidence of that. Rather than being 90-degree cuts in the stone, they're actually dovetails. And that would insinuate that another block of stone matching it would come down and lock into place with it. None of the H blocks are exactly the same size. And that's a complete fallacy that some researchers have stated, that they were as if they were produced in a factory or poured into a mold. Everyone's different. Now, another point to take into consideration is that these grooves here, you see, they're not from the same time period as the shaping of the stone, because these grooves are quite crude. So they would have been made after the initial shaping of the stone. The difference in time could easily be several thousands of years. Okay, here again, this is a block that was found in situ, originally buried. Look at the incredible precision of the cuts, and so many different ones as well. And then as we travel through this area, we're coming up to the foundation stones, some of which, or at least one of which, may weigh 131 tons. This material is red sandstone, and it's from the area. But if it's 131 tons, how was it moved from the quarry 5 to 10 kilometers away to this location, when you see the whole area here is basically treeless? They could not have used logs as rollers. So how could this material have been moved? Unfortunately, red sandstone is not as hard or durable as the gray andesite that we see. And so there's so much weathering on the surfaces that we don't see much in terms of precision. But that block there, which is multiple tons, is the andesite. And what we'll do with the camera is we'll have the camera lower down and then come back up. And you'll see it is as flat as a tabletop. Bronze chisels, stone hammers, Inca, Tiwanaku, Aymara, none of them could have done that. We're looking at a clear example of lost ancient technology. So these are the famous H blocks. And again, there have been some theories stating that these were made in a mold, or that they were made in a factory, exact copies of one another. But we've taken tape measures, we've measured them, and every single one is different. So the idea that they made a wall is quite foolish. The idea that they made a launch pad for a spacecraft is honestly stupid, because that would be something done in a 1950s science fiction film. The other point, which is or 2 points. One is that this is not a 90-degree angle. The distance between here and there is smaller than between here and there. So this is in fact a dovetail. It is possible that when it was originally built, there were stones that came down and interlocked into this. And as well, the only 2 symbols that we find at Pumapunku are this one in here and the one below it. All of the carving that was done, all of the images of Viracocha, etc., all of that was done later, and I can show that to you right over here. So next we're off to Tiwanaku, and there we'll see again a lot of evidence of the, I believe, Pumapunku builders, the oldest culture to occupy this area.